Des yachts, des cabines UV, des
Yachts, sunbeds and fancy coffee machines. Some European companies seem to be getting some nice perks. This is how the media in Western Europe described the scandal surrounding the distribution of Poland's money from the EU post-COVID recovery fund. In its report, the German-French editorial team at ARTE discusses companies and projects receiving funds that have nothing to do with economic development.
Début août, le gouvernement polonais a publié
At the beginning of August, the Polish government published a map showing who received the money. After a quick search, internet users discovered that companies had spent around €280 million on saunas, sunbeds, yachts and other luxury items, all under the guise of diversifying activities to protect against future crises. Irregularities and abuses have also been revealed in other countries, but the ARTE journalists emphasised the enormous scale of the pathology in Poland under Donald Tusk's government.
Pologne, le gouvernement de Donald Tusk.
In Poland, Donald Tusk's government is in chaos after a similar scandal. Tens of billions of euros from European funds that had been frozen under the previous government have been released. The scandal over Poland's EU Recovery Fund money, also called the KPO scandal, is also being covered by other European media outlets, including the Daily Telegraph, Politico and Bloomberg. This dispute is another blow to Tusk, the former president of the European Council, who managed to unblock the funds after winning the 2023 election when he promised to restore democratic order in Poland. The previous government, in which Kaczynski served twice as deputy prime minister, lost access to tens of billions of euros in financial aid after EU courts ruled that judicial reforms gave politicians too much influence over judges in violation of EU rule of law standards. And yet the opposition warned from the outset that the money from the National Recovery Plan was nothing more than a financial instrument of political pressure on Poland. Every time, we have already learned, it ends with those who are not obedient being punished and blackmailed. Tusk's government announced audits, but the list of companies to be checked did not include those linked to politicians from the civic platform, Tusk's party, whose subsidies caused the most controversy. The case is being investigated by the European Public Prosecutor's Office, among others, and politicians from Tusk's coalition government seem to have realised that the KPU scandal cannot simply be swept under the carpet. I am convinced that all the information that has appeared in the media will be clarified and that every zloty that may have been spent in a manner inconsistent with the procedures will be returned to the Polish budget. However, the damage has already been done. All of Europe has already heard about how Tusk's Poland is using European Union taxpayers' money. The Polish model of spending this money has become a symbol of all of the EU's pathology and has therefore been propagated within the European Union as the worst example of said pathology. These huge sums of money were supposed to strengthen the economies of EU member states after the crisis caused by the lockdowns imposed by the almost all European governments during the COVID-19 pandemic. But in Poland, instead of going to companies that actually suffered during that period, funds very often ended up in the accounts of companies linked to politicians from Tusk's coalition. Poland is shown among countries like Italy, Greece and Slovakia, which are considered to be extremely corrupt. This could mean that Poland will receive less EU funding in future. What Germany naturally regrets is its contribution to the overall European Recovery Fund programme. According to the Germans, as the economy that contributes the most to the European budget, it received much less than it contributed. This is bad news for Poland, but even worse news for Donald Tusk. What is particularly painful for Tusk is that the Germans are writing about it. As we know, it was thanks to Germany and the support of Brussels that he became Prime Minister. External pressure regarding the Recovery Fund largely convinced Poles to vote for Tusk. Today he is losing face because he is misusing the recovery funds. This, in my opinion, is a very dangerous situation for Tusk because he already has no support in the United States. If he loses his support in Berlin and Brussels, it will be the end of his political career. The latest United Surveys poll shows that almost 7 out of 10 Poles are demanding the resignation of Katarzyna Polczyńska-Nałęcz, Minister of Funds and Regional Policy, who is directly responsible for distributing money from the EU Recovery Fund, including the money that went on yachts, sunbeds and fancy coffee machines.